Hello everybody, Groundback here, and today I will be ranking all of the types in Generation 1. Not so much the type itself, but ranking how good the types are, just based off like the actual Pokemon. So which Pokemon ended up being in much higher tiers, which Pokemon are good because of their types, etc. The reason why I'm doing this now, because I've actually been thinking about doing this video for a while. Ever since I saw Big Yellow do his video on the ice types, I was really fascinated by the idea, or just the fact that there wasn't a single ice type Pokemon below underuse, and even in underuse and overuse, there wasn't a single Pokemon that was actually bad. Every single ice type ended up being good and could carry its own weight, which made me curious, because some Pokemon, like, let's say, Poison, there's a lot of them, but also, like, a lot that end up being good in tiers too. So I figured it would be interesting. And this video is also, in a way, sort of like a precursor for the Generation Jumble. Because the Generation Jumble, since I'll be adding so many new Pokemon, one interesting part about it would be that I'm testing, like, these new Pokemon, and it's gonna be, like we're gonna see firsthand if a lot of the top tiers, aka the normal and psychic types, will end up, like, taking a huge, like, decline, or if, like, the ice types might take a decline, or if they might even get a rise. So that's what the whole point of this video is, just to go over all of them, what I personally think in Generation 1, and just go over each type. And then once the Generation Jumble Season 1 is over, I'll do another video ranking how I think the types did after that. So starting off with the bug type, and this one should be pretty straightforward. Unfortunately, most bug types are just really bad. You do have Pinsir, which does have a niche in Generation 1, like OU, but it is garbage. So I feel like, even though it's very sad to say, we probably do need one more tier, which is just F tier. Because the bug type, it's just not good. And for every single, like, bug, like, Pokemon, they're not even, like, the most dominant thing in the tier. Keep in mind, this doesn't mean the bug type itself is bad. Because the bug type, on paper, is not that bad. Because you have, a very valuable resistance to, ground. But in practice, there's just not any good Pokemon that, just no good Pokemon that ended up rising, or ended up being good, or amazing in a tier. Maybe, like, Pinsir and Scyther are, like, okay in PU, but I have my doubts. But anyone that's experienced with the PU tier, you can let me know, like, how they actually do there. I am kind of curious. And for Dark, am I able to look up the Dark type here? Yes, I am. So, for Cantonian Pokemon, even though the Dark type isn't a thing, I do think I should have it here for the sole purpose of, the Generation Jumble will at least have one in being Hydreigon. So good to see where it would be if you just count the actual Dark types that are just the regional variants. And Raticate, Persian, Moltres, Muck, they would be okay. They wouldn't be super dominant, especially not in Gen 1 custom games, when they, what's it called? Like, were dark. Like, it just hits psychic neutrally. Doesn't hit anything super effectively. But they still have the very valuable psychic immunity, though. So, it would still be really good, but just defensively. No Pokemon would, like, be a huge problem, other than maybe Persian, with its high speed, amnesia, and hypnosis. But since the Alolan Persian video I made a few days ago, a lot of you have corrected me on a lot of my mistakes there. Some of which being either like, obviously Sweep Claws being a thing, Water Pulse not being a Gen 1, actually being Bubble Beam, so it has no way of hurting Rhydon. It's some other stuff, but that's not important for this video. The point is, Dark type would be okay. Dragon, on the other hand, we only have a Dragonite, and the Dragon type really just holds it back. Not only that, but Dragonair entertaining or just not good at all. And for Dragonite, like, yeah, it has a niche in Gen 1, but it's a really scummy one, and like, just not very good. Just a Jibble Wrap. There's not much, like, it doesn't really do anything. Not to mention, like, the actual, like, strategy itself, like, does nothing with, you know, actually being a Dragon type. If anything, Dragonite just really wishes it was a normal type. So the Dragon type doesn't do much, and I'm sure Dragonite is good and underused, but I don't think he's, like, dominant, especially after, you know, a Jibble Wrap getting banned. With the Jibble Wrap being banned, like, maybe beforehand, I would have put the Dragon type in, like, C tier, but the Dragon just on its own just does not do much. So, I'm sorry, but I'm putting in D. Now, Electric type should be one of the better ones, I would imagine. Because you have Jolteon and Zapdos that are in OU, Electabuzz is good in UU, and Raichu has a niche in OU with Surf. I don't know how good Magneton and Electrode are, but overall, the small amount of electric types that are here all ended up doing pretty well for themselves. At the very least, these four here, which will be over half of them. So, does that mean it would be A tier or B tier? I'm gonna go with A tier. Maybe that's being generous, but overall, like, it seems like most of the electric types do end up being just amazing. Like, just look at just how great, like, Zapdos is in Gen 1. So I feel like this isn't too much of a stretch, putting electric type in A. You can disagree with me if you want, but it just feels right to me. And for Fairy, you have Alolan Ninetales, and then you also have, what would he have, like Wigglytuff being a Fairy type, and what else? That wouldn't be bad. But then there's the huge issue of Fairy type from what I keep hearing in Generation 1 custom games would not only be physical, but like just like Dark type, I would imagine it would even hit anything for super effectively. Not to mention what it does hit super effectively, Dark, Dragon, and Fighting are just not really needed in Gen 1. Like, there's not any Pokemon of those three types that, like, there's a big threat for. So, like, I think D tier would actually be right. Because the Fairy type is just, it basically should be nothing. Every time I've covered a Fairy type in Gen 1, it has, like, the only relevant thing is maybe resisting Low Kick, and that's it. So for the most part, every time you have a Fairy type in Gen 1, it just doesn't add anything. So I feel like D tier is, like, fine. Again, you can disagree with me. I'd love to hear your arguments. Now for Fighting, oh boy. Almost all of these are just really bad. So Fighting ends up being F tier, which is really unfortunate. But, like, even though, like, Poliwrath is, like, has, like, you know, something to do in OU, and even, like, Machamp and, like, Hitmonlee if you just want to have fun on the low rank ladder. But it doesn't really excuse just how much the fighting type underperforms. Like, outside of Poliwrath, the entire, like, species, or every single fighting type is just PU. So, like, I don't want to put, you know what, maybe Bug doesn't have, or no, Bug should probably stay here. But it's, yeah, not very good. Now for Fire, I know most of them are, like, low tiers, but, like, I know that, like, Charizard and Moltres are pretty good for their tier. I don't know about Ninetales, and I do not know about the PU of Fire types, but also the fact that most of them are so low should also probably be a bad sign. I'll put them in C tier. Not as good as Dark, but, like, they have, like, stuff they can do. And for the tiers that they are in, like, they do manage to make a name for themselves. But a lot of that's only because most of their counters are in the higher tiers. So, really, is it really winning? Not really. So I don't really know how to judge flying type, because every single good flying type, or I guess Zapdos does legitimately appreciate, like having an earthquake immunity. Articuno, I would imagine, would rather not have flying type, because it, has a quad weakness to rock. I know for a fact Dragonite doesn't really care for its, like, flying typing. It hates being quad weak to ice. I do not know about Gyarados. The only one I know for a fact, or Aerodactyl and Dodrio definitely appreciate it. Not sure how it is for Charizard and Moltres. And I'm sure, Fearow enjoys having Stab Drill Peck. Same with Farfetch'd. So most of these, don't, they appreciate the Earthquake immunity. That's for sure. But doesn't really seem like most of these guys do anything with the actual flying typing. And while Zapdos is good, and obviously, Dodrio, Gyarados, and Articuno are good, same with Moltres and Charizard, I don't know, it's weird. It's weird, but the flying type exactly, I feel like I'm contradicting a lot of my rules, because you do have flying types in every single tier finding success. So I think I'll just put it in C tier. I just really don't know how to rank it. Now, Ghost type, this one should be pretty simple. I don't even need to go on the tiers for it, because Ghost type is both great in OU and in underused. And I forget where Ghastly is ranked. I think it's PU? Or if it's not PU, then, PUBO? I forget exactly. But I do know that, in the tier where Ghastly does have a good power level, it ends up being broken. So, every single member of the Ghost line ends up being super successful. And, quite frankly, just amazing. It always is great in every tier it is. Gengar and Haunter just have these, huge roles that no other Pokemon can, replicate. So, maybe you can argue it being in A tier instead, because of just how dominant the other ones are. And as I go over the other types, maybe I might do that. But for now, I think putting in S tier is fine. And then for Grass, now that Sleep is banned, so many of these just have nothing to do. But it doesn't make it bad. I think C tier is probably okay. Yeah, I don't really know what else to really say. A lot of these are good for ground resistance and being, sweep setters. But with Sleep banned and, underused, I'm not really sure what else you can really say. There's not, you need better grass attacking moves. You have Razor Leaf, which is admittedly solid. But then, Mega Drain is your only other one, and that just sucks, honestly. So, C tier, and that might even be generous. The Ground and Rock is going to be tricky, because they are very, very similar. There's only a few Pokemon that have differences for both. So, we have Dugtrio, and then Sandslash, who are mainly representing the ground types. Oh, and Nidoking and Nidoqueen. And those guys are, the best Pokemon for their tiers. Rhydon's obviously spectacular. I know Golem is used in every single one of the tiers, and Dugtrio is very good and underused. So I'll put it in A tier, because every single Pokemon is good. And for, the lower tiers, Nidoking and Nidoqueen, they are, just amazing. But also, outside of those ones, which I am not too experienced with, I know at the very least for both OU and underuse, ground types are good, but they're not, dominant. Not dominant like how they are in Gen 9, that's for sure. And in Ice type, I already went over a little bit, but Ice pretty much, has 5 fully evolved Pokemon, and they're all in the higher-ups. There is no doubt about it that this type is S tier. It even has more Pokemon than Ghost. And now I'm debating if I put Ghost in A tier, then put Electric in B tier. Because Electric doesn't seem anywhere near as dominant as both Ghost and Ground are. Actually, this seems right. This seems like more fair. And yeah, Ice type. It's just so unbelievably broken. Just like insane. Just how successful the entire tier is. Every single Ice type you see there is fully evolved, and all of them are good in the 2 highest tiers, not counting Ubers. So let's just move on to normal. And I don't even need to tell you where this one's gonna be. Like, the normals are the best Pokemon in OU. They are really good in UU. And they also are good in NU or NPU. They're good in every single tier. Even with there being so many normal types, they always manage to just have like a really big impact in the meta because of just how strong their normal moves actually are. Definitely S tier. Considering normal is just the strongest type in Gen 1, I probably should just put it above Ice. I'm not sure if it's better than Ice and Underuse if you just look at the Underuse tier in a vacuum. But I do feel like even if Ice was better, normal wouldn't be far behind. So like this one's pretty easy. Definitely S tier. And Poison was the one that really inspired me to go over this video because of the rules. Because if you actually look at so many of these Poison types, Gengar, Haunter, Tentacruel, Nidoking, Arbok, they do pretty well. Like, Nidoqueen's also like the best Pokemon in PU. And Tentacruel isn't just like, it doesn't just have a hindrance from, Poison. Because Tentacruel having an immunity to Toxic is actually pretty huge. Same goes for Nidoking and Nidoqueen. So, Poison types, despite Poison on its own being a hindrance to most of them, like, even if, like, it was weak to Toxic, I think Tentacruel might trade that in for a ground weakness, but I'm not exactly sure. But Poison, like, didn't do half bad. Now, to be fair, that could be because there is just so many, meaning the probability of Poison types being good, like, it had to happen somewhere. But there's no denying that, like, Poison types, like, not only, like, does every single tier have at least one, like, major relevant one, but they end up being pretty good for themselves. I'm not gonna, like, be crazy and put in S tier, but actually, I think I will put in A, because, even though, like, it's not as, like, dominant as, like Ghost or Ground, or debatably more dominant than Ground, now that I think about it, or it's kind of hard because Nidoqueen and Nidoking are both Poison and Ground, so both are just doing a good job representing each other's type. Or now that, or when I word it like that, that actually probably means that they probably just should go together. Yeah, that makes sense in my mind. Psychic should also be just another, like, simple one to go over. It's, like, another just really overpowered type, and one of the most infamous types in the game's history. And if you just look here, you already have, like, 5 in OU. We had, like, 5 ice types in, like, Gen 1, OU, in, like, Underuse. And that was just in between them, and just one in just BL Hell. Meanwhile, the amount of fully evolved Psychic type, or Ice types, the amount of fully evolved Ice types is just equal to just the amount of Psychic types in OU. So, that is crazy. And then we have like, BL Hell. We have Kadabra, who is just legitimately really good in Underuse. And then we have freaking, like, Execute and Mr. Mime, which is already kind of crazy that they're both in the same tier in the first place. And I've heard way more about Execute than Mr. Mime, which is a little concerning. But, oh my gosh, even if we didn't go over just how good these Pokemon are in the lower tiers, just having 5? Like, yeah, like, no doubt about it, Psychic, while on its own, isn't the strongest type in Gen 1. In terms of just, like, how good the types did, there's no doubt about it that Psychic is the best type. And for Rock, we've already gone over, like, Rhydon and Golem. So now we need to go over, the Rock types that have nothing to do with, in a Wetch community. So that would be just Aerodactyl, Amistar, and Kabutops exactly. A Kabutops does have a niche in Gen 1. Sword Stance user, resists normal, 3 hit KOs right on with Hydro Pump. And while normal resistance is huge, and it's what makes the ground type, or not the ground, the rock type, so strong in Gen 1, I think a big issue is that, like, electric types, since every single rock type that isn't a ground type is weak to electric. So if you just look at rock on its own, the normal resistance is good, but every single Pokemon it isn't anywhere near as strong without the ground typing. So I think B tier is perfectly fair for it. Electric is definitely better, but it's not a bad type. But it really needs the ground type too in order to really excel for its job as a rock type. And then for Steel, only Magneton would technically count. But then we would also have like Alolan Sandslash and Dugtrio. I definitely know Sandslash would be really good. In fact, since there's no real no real fighting or fire types in OU, Steel and Ice is just a really, really good defensive typing. Like, let's just look at it this way. A Steel and Ice type literally resists all 3 types here. In fact, it quad resists Ice, and has an immunity to Freeze. So that alone would just make Steel just incredibly busted. But, Alolan Sandslash would be incredibly good, but Alolan Dugtrio probably wouldn't. So let's just be fair and just put the Steel type in B tier. That sounds like it would, make the most amount of sense. Like, most likely, like, the Pokemon that are in the Generation Jumble, Skarmory will most likely end up being voted on. So we'll have, like, more chances to see how good the Steel type actually does. But now we only have one more type to cover, and that is Water. And Water, so, like, you already have 3 in OU, and a lot in Underuse. And that's already good. Oh, but you also have, like, 3 in NU. You have, like, Blastoise, and then these 2 are legitimately, like, usable in OU. Okay, yeah, actually, this is way more simple than I thought. Water type probably goes in S tier. Not as dominant as, like, these other 3, but so many of these are just, like, too good for NU. You have, like, Lapras, and, like, freaking Kabutops and Kingor, who can just be used in OU anyways. And if you count Lapras and these guys, it's just OU usable Pokemon. You already have more here than you do, like, with the Psychic type. Which obviously is not a fair adjustment, but yeah, the Water type is just really good. And they have a lot of bans, which, granted, is more so because Hypnosis bullshit, but, I'm not here to rank, like, how they're good or why they're good. I just care about if they're good. And there's no doubt about it that a lot of water types are really good. So here is my tier list for just how good all of the types did in Generation 1, along with the hypothetical on how the Dark type, Steel type, and Fairy type would do. Let me know in the comments if you agree with or disagree with this. And some predictions I'll make right now. I do think that once the Generation Jumble starts, I do think that Dragon and Fire will have a massive, upgrade. I think they'll do a lot better. Bug type will also probably get a huge upgrade since Heracross is most likely going to make it in. And Heracross will be given access to a signature move, Mega Horn. Which, as you can imagine, is going to be pretty good in Gen 1. Electric also might end up going to A tier, or maybe even S tier, because Regieleki also looks like it's probably going to end up in. By the way, if you want to know the 8 Pokemon that are in the running, you have Sceptile, Regieleki, Smeargle, Skarmory, what else? Skarmory, Terrakion, Hydreigon, and Great Tusk are already guaranteed. And you also have Porygon Z, which is also in the running. And Gliscor, that's another one. I'm pretty sure I'm forgetting some, but that's really why I have a video which goes over all the Pokemon that are in the running. So be sure to vote. Tomorrow, I will make a video that will fully explain the rest of the Generation Jumble. So be sure to ask any questions you have about it, because I will be answering all of them. And yeah, like here's my tier list. Thank y'all for watching, and until next time, this is Groundback, and I look forward to hearing from you.